Welcome to Smart Franchising with FranSmart. I'm Dan Rowe, and I've masterminded the ascent of local favorites to global dominators. This isn't your usual get-to-know-you chat. We're diving deep. We're revealing the raw truths about franchise wealth building. With over 30 years in the trenches, I'm spilling it all. If you have an appetite for unfiltered tales and the hidden blueprints of franchise prosperity, buckle up. We're diving in. All right. Welcome back to Smart Franchising with FranSmart. And today my guest is Brian Beers, entrepreneur, franchise expert, large multi-unit, multi-concept franchisee, and strategic advisor to people looking to generate wealth in franchising. Brian's the highest producing consultant with FranServe, some of that with us. And I recently met Brian in Philly and beyond impressed with his success so far. So Brian doesn't just talk about having a successful franchise, rather how to build a franchise empire, which is right up my alley. So thank you very much for joining us and being willing to share some of your secrets and some of your insights, Brian. So before we get started, how about a little bit about your background and your story in your own words?
Yeah, cool. Thanks for having me. So I've been in franchising my entire life. My dad got into his first franchise in the 70s. In Midas, doing mufflers. It was kind of the only business he had. Grew to about 6 locations in the Philly area. I joined the business after college. They were ready to sell and get out and just kind of retire, move on. The business wasn't really actually making money. Times were, things had changed a lot. And so I kind of joined as a Hail Mary to try to get this thing turned around. And if not, we'd sell it. And so then I spent the next 6 years really learning the business and growing it, and kind of eventually worked my way up to having some money and going out and bought some of the stores of my own and then continued to grow. So
what do you think, like with Midas, what is it you thought you did differently to have success? Because you, like in any chain, you've got the best franchisees and the worst franchisees. So what do you think that you did differently to have such success?
Yeah, I think, I really focused on kind of the people and the culture. And, something I learned pretty early was that every franchise is in the people business that just happens to fix cars, paint houses, make burgers, whatever it is. But we're all in the people business because at the end of the day, like we hire the same, like kind of technicians kind of move around. We buy parts from the same places. We fix the same cars. We charge relatively the same things. But what's different is the experience that a customer is going to have like in the store, when in that business, right? And for us, it's hiring employees and building a team and a culture of people who want to be there and want to give customers great experience and don't want to jump around between jobs. And so I went in and a lot of it was helping to kind of rebuild that culture, where I think we had a lot of people on board years ago that just like weren't that into it, and we're just there to punch a clock in and out, versus like people who really were more passionate about like, hey, I want to build something and I'll impact people. So
how many franchises do you have? What all do you own?
Yeah. So today, my brother and I, we're partners on all this stuff. So we have 33 Midas shops, Philly, New Jersey regions. And then we own 13 territories of That One Painter. It's a residential painting franchise. Those are development agreements. So we have 4 of them launched, and over the next 2 years or so, we'll get the rest of them going. Same region. And then I'm a partner in a couple others as more of a financial partner and a strategic partner. We're in a B2B kitchen service business. We're in a senior care business. We've got a couple others in the works. So
nice. So all modesty aside, like that has to have something to do with why you're so successful as a franchise broker, franchise consultant, because you're actually successful as a franchisee.
Yeah. It's a significant, we'll do 45 million in revenue this year. We have 200 employees. It's a substantial business. We're the 4th largest franchisee now. And, I think a lot from the helping people kind of get started is, we've lived it. I live it every day. And, I think a lot of what people want to achieve, we can speak from experience of what it truly takes to get there, and, not from all theory. And I think people want to hear that. I think people really want to hear that, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard. But if you do the hard work and you do things that other people aren't willing to do, that's how you can get the rewards that other people don't get. And I think there's a lot of people out there, just selling the dream of it all, right? Whatever it is, but they make it sound easy. And I think something that I talk about a lot is that it's not easy, right? And it takes risk, and it takes work and dedication and focus and all these things. But if you do it long enough and you stay disciplined enough, you can build a big company. So.
Yeah. So your advice, so somebody comes to you and says, hey, I'm thinking about getting into franchising. How do you sort of at least help them figure out if this is even right for them or not?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing we go through is them really understanding that, when you get into a franchise, I mean, you're getting into a business. Like, and a business is unique, and a business should match your personality, because you need to eat, breathe, sleep that business. It should be all you think about. You lay away at night thinking about, how am I going to make this thing better? Right? I think the big misconception that people have is that like buying into a franchise is like buying a piece of real estate or something, where there's like, if you do these things, they will be some predetermined amount of rate of return. But the truth is, there's a high variance in franchise performance. You look at the FDDs, right? On my teams, there's people who crush it, and there's people who don't. And they all have the same tools, the same systems, they have access to everything is equal. And the difference between the top performers and the bottom performers is the franchisee, is the owner who's driving it forward. He's the one, or she's the one who is hiring great people, who's holding them accountable, who has the vision, who doesn't give up. They have that resiliency, but all that's like them as an inner person, right? So for me, like that's the most exciting part, right? Because that means I can go in there and I can get into a brand. And many of the stores, even that we bought, like we're losing money, and we go in there and, I'm confident in our ability, because we've done it before, to get these things turned around. Or if we're launching a new franchise or a new concept, like we have a pretty good idea of what we think it's going to take to succeed. And so we reverse engineer the process. That we say, okay, you understand that getting into this thing is, it's extremely personal. It's like buying a house, right? And I bet that you think about your dream house, you have this checklist in your head that says, I want, this many bedrooms, this many bathrooms, this school district, possibly even this zip code. I want a sidewalk. I don't want this. I want that. Like, you have a very clear picture. During COVID, people are like buying houses sight unseen, because in their mind, they knew exactly what they wanted. And so when they came across it, they didn't even need to step inside of it, because it already like checked every box. And I encourage the people that we work with to do the same thing when they're thinking about a business, to say, like, what are the attributes? What are the qualities that you want, that match like your goals, your skills, like make sense with your budget, make sense where you live, and like getting very detailed in that. So we help people kind of come up with this checklist. It says, hey, what are the things that you are going to require in a business that are your deal breakers, that like you will not buy a business if it does not have these things? And it's different for everybody, right? Some people, like for me, it's like, I want something that's sales driven. Like I'm pretty good at hiring salespeople and driving sales. Maybe I want something that's like high ticket. Maybe it's like, I don't want real estate, or, a lot of the deals you do in FranSmart, it's like, hey, people want retail. Like they like retail. They want something that has a retail presence, but with a build out cost that's less than 500,000, right? You have some sort of like number, and then you'd have like your nice to have. So what's a nice to have? Maybe recurring revenue, right? For me, not a deal breaker, but hey, it's nice. And then maybe you have the things you don't want. You have an anti-list. So me, I have young kids. I want to be home at dinner every night. Like I don't want to be in an emergency 24/7 business. There's other people don't, it's not a factor, different phases of life, right? And so I think through all those things, like and then you come up with these lists. What are the things that you really want to have? What are the nice to haves, and what are the deal breakers? And then once you get that clarity, it's super easy to narrow a list of, 3,000 possibilities or how many franchises exist down to a handful. And so that's kind of our process. And I think that's why we're successful, because we reverse engineer the process.
Yeah. And I always get into franchising thinking I'm going to sell it. Like all the money I have put away has come from when I've sold a business. Like the more I make, the more I spend. So, I've accumulated wealth by selling companies, and I also never want to be the hands-on operator. So one of the things that you keyed in and on was people. And, you've got to actually have good people, but you've got to keep good people. And those good people have to be motivated, incentivized, and paid well, and not leave. Yep. Like no one talks about the hidden cost of turnover, like not only the cost, but just the drag it has on a business. I believe in aligning the compensation of my people with my goals. So if I want to get rich on a certain brand, I'm spreading that around. What are your thoughts about how you actually find the right people, come up with a plan so that they actually stay there and they build your business for you?
Yes, I mean, every person in our organization is performance based. I mean, in the Midas business, I mean, the technicians, the more they produce, the more they make. So they're incentivized to obviously do good quality work but invest in themselves, invest in tools, invest in education. That's how they get better at diagnosing, quicker to repair. And managers, we've kind of gone through these iterations. So now majority of our managers are currently on a plan that pays them for volume and growth of gross profit is the number we look at. We are now starting to roll out a partnership program with our store managers so that they can earn a percentage of the store's profits based on, everything, whatever, 25% is the number. They get 25%, which includes like their pay of whatever that store makes. And so if they can run a super profitable store, they can make a ton of money. And so we have 3 of those now, 4 of those right now. But that's a plan that we're really looking to accelerate and will allow us to attract, high level talent from competitors who have similar plans or used to have similar plans. So sharing the profits is definitely something that, we believe in. At the leadership level, I've had a ton of success hiring former military special operations veterans. So think Navy SEAL, Green Beret, Army Rangers. And, they're coming straight out of the military and they have no industry experience, but they're the top leaders in the world, top, less than 1% of these guys. It's amazing when you dive into the numbers. And I've hired them as CEOs, COOs, chief of staff, and those guys are amazing.
Yeah. And those people in the military are phenomenal at following systems. Like everything's a system and a process and a procedure, and they're relentless about following it. For me, like when I was growing Five Guys or any of the other brands, you'd have a struggling location, and then all of a sudden that franchisee gets out and another franchisee comes in. All they do is start following the systems and the business goes back up. So I've had a lot of luck with the military as well, but that's pretty cool. What is Franchise Mastermind?
So last year, beginning of 2024, I created it's called the 8-Figure Franchisee. So it's a mastermind, it's a community, whatever you want to call it, but it's a bunch of like-minded people who get together and so we're all franchisees. There's no franchisors, there's no vendors, there's no third party. It's just people like me and trying to help each other grow. Cause we all deal with the same problems. Like whether we are in paint or Five Guys or, auto repair, doesn't matter. Like it's all people, process, profit. How do we negotiate a seller financing deal? How do we deal with an issue with the franchisor? How do we set a growth plan and do it? And so, so it's a great program. We got about 40 people in it as of today from various backgrounds. And actually, I just hosted it an hour ago. One of our members is part of a group that does over $100 million a year as a franchisee. It's a massive, massive group. And so it's one of the partners in the group. And it's this deep dive, hot seat interview just like this, but a private conversation for the group where, he's going to share things in this trusted, environment where everybody's signed NDAs, non-disclosure documents and everything to share things that he's not going to share on a podcast or write on Facebook or Twitter or anywhere else, to talk about how they've grown, how they structure partnership deals, all the things that you really want to know, because it's like, who else are you going to learn this from? Right. And the truth is within the franchise world, we can learn from each other, even if we're in different brands. Many of the same principles, 90% of the same principles apply. And there's a lot of these groups that exist for in the real estate business, for people who want to wholesale houses or buy rentals or apartment syndications or whatever. I have a whole bunch of friends in that world. But only very, very few exist just for franchisees. And so that's what I created, and we're working to make it, the best one in the country. So,
yeah. So really just sharing best practices, mentoring each other to build big businesses. What I like about 8-figure franchises is that's real wealth, because, you build a business that can make you 100 grand, 200 grand. That's just income. That's buying yourself a job. 7 figures is awesome. 8 figures, you're really making real money. And especially if you build a business at that level, you have a business you can sell for generational wealth. And, I feel like the only reason anyone should buy a franchise is to get wealthy, because you buy yourself a job, but you still have personal guarantees and, you got the headache. If you have a job and you don't like it, you just quit, go get another job. But if you buy a franchise as your job and realize you don't like it, you're stuck. So I feel like the only reason you should get a franchise is to build something massive. And people forget about the second bite of the apple in franchising, which is if you have an 8-figure franchise business, think about what that's worth when you sell it. That's the second bite at the apple. I was just going to ask, what are some thoughts that you have about someone getting into franchising? I think you said earlier, you think about the end, you think about the end and work backwards, right? Or something like that. But that's kind of what I do is I think about the kind of company I'm trying to build. I want to basically invest as little as I need to get the business to the point where it self-funds and compounds growth into something much bigger. And then I have a business I can sell and then go do it again with a pocket full of money.
Yep. Yeah, I think you want to be intentional with everything you do. I mean, the most successful people I know are extremely intentional. So they're not just flying by the seat of the pants. They don't let the waves just come crashing and take them by. From the very beginning, they set a plan to say, hey, this is what I want to do. Even for you, it's hey, I want to create X amount of equity dollars in my pocket, and this is what I have to do. And I think if you can back into kind of, hey, what's that end goal, and then you start to back into what you need to do, it becomes a lot easier. I think the other thing is, as you grow, it gets easier to grow the bigger you get. Like the wealthy always get wealthier, or the rich get richer. It's a very real thing, because part of it is in the beginning, you don't know what you don't know. Everything's a grind. You haven't built that good team. You make a lot of mistakes, and you feel like you're on a hamster wheel, which is what a lot of new franchisees struggle with. And even us launching new brands, we feel that too. But then as you start to build that team, and as you start to hire more aces, and you discard the 2s and 3s and 4s, you start to have a better teams. Things start to click more, right? You're not making those same mistakes. And now you have those opportunities to do those acquisitions. And even for us, we could double in size. We could buy 30 more stores, go from a $40 million company to an $80 million company or whatever. And my life would not change. Almost nothing would change about my life. Because we have all these systems already built. We already have the office that can handle payroll. We've already got these systems in place from technology, tons of things that we could change. That would happen, and my life wouldn't change. But I just doubled my income, right? And probably multiple times what the company is worth. But that gets easier over time. And so that's the key is once you get through that really hard period, it can be like a hockey stick in any, and this applies to any business, but especially in franchising, because of the rinse and repeat nature of once you get those systems down, it's just so much easier just to keep going on it.
Yeah. I like the idea of your mastermind too. The whole peer group, shared experiences. I find, I don't know if you feel the same way, but in every franchise, let's say Five Guys or whatever, I know a bunch of Great Clips franchisees. There's the best ones and the ones that struggle. The best ones are always willing to share ideas. If I were going into any franchise, I would search out the most successful franchisees and say, will you please tell me exactly what to do? I want to do what you do. And they're likely to say, because they don't want you screwing up the system. But are you finding the same thing?
Yeah. I'm a huge proponent of that, of add value. Even if how we've grown the Midas business is through that. I am, for years, I was on all the committees. I would be sharing, all the best practices that we would do. During COVID, I hosted best practice calls for franchisees because no one was traveling. So I would on my own, I got the top franchisees together. I would interview them just like this, and we'd invite the entire system. Midas system wide promoted it. And, I always wanted to put myself in a position of how do I add value to other people? How do I make them better? Because then when they want to sell, guess who they're going to come to first? The person they know, like, and trust. And they know I'm a good performer. They like me. They trust that, I'm going to pay them. Many of these deals I get seller financed, or trust that I'm going to take care of their employees, because many times they've been here. Many of the people we're buying out have been in for decades. And so I think getting extremely active in all the franchise communities, looking to add value, doing whatever you can to help other people, karma, is a powerful force. And I think there's nothing better than for a franchisee to succeed than to have that mentality.
Yeah. And you've said before, owning a franchise has changed my life. It's earned more money and more freedom than ever thought possible. Like, what do you mean by that? Give us your example of how that worked.
Yeah, I think, a lot of it is just it's been the opportunity to grow, especially in the auto repair business. We fight for hard real estate. Like, real estate's really hard to find, right? Retail, automotive, whatever. If we were Beers Automotive or Beers Tire and whatever, like it would be extremely hard for us to find the quality of real estate that we're able to get into, through being part of a brand. Like, it's, in some ways, it's access to the real estate is a huge value. So, like, I just think if I was in the franchise business, even if we were in automotive, and I'm not even a car guy, I don't fix cars. I don't like cars. I like the challenges of it. But, like, let's say that was the business, that we would be nowhere near the same size. And the fact that, like, just like what we talked about, like when I had joined the business and I'm trying to figure out how do I turn these things around, I did exactly what you said. I traveled around the country. I wanted to learn from the best franchisees to say, hey, like, what are you doing? Labor rates, how do you pay your people? Like, what type of marketing are you doing? Like, they're showing me P&Ls, like I'm showing their, my P&L. We're trying to figure out, like, what are the differences in margins and where can I pick it up? But, like, if I wasn't in a franchise to say, hey, I'm into this business, like, a lot of times you're totally on an island. Right. And maybe, now I think it's a little bit easier with, you got on the internet and these communities, but, like, you don't really know people. Right. And it's, like, hard to really build relationships. But, like, I think that the thing that people just don't realize until they're on the inside is the value of that community. And, ultimately that helped me build a really good business, which in turn has, made me a lot of money and, freedom. The bigger the business becomes, the more budget I have to hire high quality people who then can take over the day-to-day stuff that I don't want to deal with, that's not fun for me, but to them, they excel in it. And so I think that's, like, I remember talking to my wife years ago, we were talking about growing, and it was, like, kind of this concern of, like, hey, if we double in size, does that mean, like, I'm doubling in my work and, like, not going to be able to home, right? Which I think is a very real problem, especially when you're in that grind. Because, like, you're already working 60 hours a week. You're like, if I doubled, how would I can't work 120, right? But, like, to get there, it's like, I need to take some of that money that I'm making now, and I need to invest it into hiring people who then free up my time and free up the type of activities you do. Part of it is, like, when you're in the grind, a lot of calls are, like, emergency calls, or, like, dealing with something like fires that have to get put out immediately. And so you're constantly sucked into it, versus, like, once you're able to move up to this higher level that I'm at, or years ago was, but really now, all the things I deal with are, it's strategic, it's growth. It's like, hey, let's plot out our next number of acquisitions. We're talking with real estate developers. We're talking with leases. We're trying to, things that don't have fires to be put out. So that, when the type of work shifts, it shifts usually to something that has more flexibility, thus more freedom. Thus, I can do it from home. We can travel wherever, and I still can accomplish the things that I need to do to continue to move the business forward. So,
do you think you were born with that gene, or you think you learned that over time? Because most entrepreneurs, especially in the beginning, are kind of control freaks and have a hard time letting go. And you've sort of famously said in conversations about replacing yourself and constantly figuring out how to replace yourself. What sort of advice do you give an entrepreneur about as fast as you possibly can replace yourself?
I mean, to me, it's the only way that you can get yourself out of the job. Like, there is no other way, because, like, when you start, you buy yourself a job, you buy a single franchise or a couple, but like, that's intentional. Like, because you have to learn the business. You have to know what it takes. Even when I joined the business, I was working 60 hours a week in the stores with the guys, like 6 days a week. I probably work on Sundays too, but I loved it. Like, I loved business. I loved the numbers. I loved figuring out, like, it wasn't work to me. It was like, it was fun. Like, I had no other hobbies. I didn't have kids at the time. And it was just, I really just enjoy business, and I enjoy the challenge of it all. But at a certain point, it's like, you have to get out of it, and you have to replace yourself. And I talk about how progress is more important than perfection. So, like, I would hire somebody, and, like, I would train them. So, like, their job, like, I was running a store. My job was to hire somebody to replace myself, to run that store. And so I'd be there with them every day. And wanted to see certain things done. And so we'd talk about it, say, all right, this is what we're going to do. This is why we're going to do it. This is like, I try to get people to see like the higher reasons, like, so they understand, not just like do this. And so I'd coach them on like how to take a phone call, or how do we pitch financing, or like, this is the process we have, right? And the franchise teaches a lot of this stuff, but start with the good and then talk about the bad and then end with something positive, whatever, the sandwich. And I just like would do it over and over again until I felt that they made progress. And as soon as they started making progress, I knew that, all right, like I'm doing a good job teaching them. They're absorbing it. They're acting upon it. And I think someone's like ability to learn is a huge like factor in if they're going to be successful. And if I can hire people who have the ability to learn and I have the ability to teach them, like you just continue this process. And was I born with it? I don't know. I mean, I've always just been driven. I've always wanted to win. I always knew that like I can only do so much, and I have to build a team in order to expand what's, the impact I can do. And I'm in some other masterminds too, right? So like I created the franchise mastermind because I want to get a bunch of franchisees together. I've been in some others, and there's a guy in the group. He's worth, I don't know, $200 million. And this was like 4 or 5 years ago. And he talks about how like there's this idea that, he's got this world, right? And that the bigger his world gets, the more opportunities that get created for the people within his world to kind of rise up. Like their balloons can continue to expand within his giant balloon. And so I think about that a lot. And, even from the Midas business to expand now to multiple businesses to, my goal is, to continue to help franchisees, eventually move into the franchisor to say, hey, how can I help create some awesome companies that, create profitable franchisees? Because if you have profitable franchisees, nothing else matters. And I just know the bigger my world gets, the more people that I create opportunities for. And I can't be a bottleneck.
And I definitely want to get your thoughts in a second about franchisors and how franchisors can be better to attract more people like you. Because you think about it, you have 40 Midases, rather than 40 people having one each, they're getting 40 times the royalties from the brothers, right? It's like that's way more profitable, way more scalable, way more people are going to want to buy that brand if there's a bunch of big multi-end franchisees. So we'll get to that in a second. How about on the mindset for franchisees? Like when you're talking to a new prospect, what are some things that you either tell him or tell he or her about the kind of mindset that you have to be a franchisee? I run into people all the time that look at the franchise, they see it, they try it, they know it, and then immediately you can tell 4 seconds into the conversation they want to change the brand.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it is like, what do you want to do? Like for me, for my personality, and this is like the question of that we go down. But my personality is just show me how to make money and I will do it. Like it doesn't need to be Brian's Tire and Auto. It doesn't need to be my idea. Like I don't care about any of that. All I want to know is like, just show me what playbook I need to run that's successful, that you've already tested out and proven and other people are doing it and all that. And I will do it. And I think if that resonates with you and you say, yeah, that's me, like franchising is great. And if you're like, no, like I want to improve it. I want to find all the ways. I want to be like this, that. I love tinkering with websites. I like the marketing. I want to play with all these SEO stuff. Like then, yeah, no, it's not for you. Like you definitely should not get into a franchise if, you want to do tons and tons of tinkering. Now we are creative in other ways. Like we are creative and in how we like a sales process to say, hey, there's a certain way, like there's this, we're big into consumer financing. Automotive repair is expensive. It's on, and we offer financing. My group is the best in the country at getting consumers on financing programs. And so we have our way of how do we present this? How do we talk about it? How do we create value? How do we, just align everything? But it's kind of like it's creativity within an established part of the brand. And like a lot of things that we've developed and taught and execute every day have spread across the country. And the same thing for other people who are testing, digital vehicle inspection. So they're piloting how do we use tablets and smartphones to inspect cars, to send you texts and emails and stuff instead of vocally. Like, so they are test piloting all these different softwares, figuring out what the best one is. Other franchisees are using it. And so like, it's not to say that you can't be creative. You're just, your focus of creativity is a lot more narrow and, and thus a lot more impactful too. And I think if I like franchising for the most part because it's like, I need to focus on sales and execution. If I can do that, then like somebody else worries about everything else, marketing, R&D, electric vehicles, whatever it is. Like someone else is worrying and coming up with all the other stuff. So I can say super narrowed on the things that I'm really good at, which is hiring people and, getting the follow process to create value and drive sales.
Yeah. And you're a hands-on operator today, 2024. I mean, we actually had a good last several years, really good last several years, but I kind of feel like to the extent that the economy was rough, it's bottomed out. Like all indications to me are that things are starting to get better. And if things go in cycles, we're about to go on an upcycle. Is there anything that is convincing you that this isn't a great time to start your own business or to start a franchise?
No, I mean, I see what you see that, hey, it's positive. I think, not to get political, but like Trump's going to help the economy. I think, if all indications of what they did in the past, taxes are going to come down, businesses are going to have cash to reinvest, hopefully wages are going up. I think there's a lot of positive that will happen over the next couple of years. And, there's no better time than now. Plus, like, what are you going to do? Like, I'm going to wait for another 4 years. Maybe you hate Trump, whatever. Doesn't matter. Like you say, I'm going to wait another 4 years because he's going to wreck it. And then it's like, I'm going to wait another 4 years. Like you can always find excuses to kick the can down the road. But at the end of the day, what doesn't matter. Like I think about this all the time. Like it doesn't matter what's happening on the macro level. Like in our business, in the auto repair business, or a Five Guys, what matters is like someone is hungry who lives within 10 minutes of the store, and they have to make a decision of where they're going to go eat that day, right? Like, and is your store clean, and is it friendly, and is the food consistent, and like, are you present? Like, do they know you're there? Like, you don't have to be the best in the world. You just have to be the best within like a couple mile radius. And so, at the end of the day, it's extremely local, and like, it doesn't matter what's happening in Ukraine or Russia or Trump, any of these things. Like what matters is a lady just got a nail in her tire and she's deciding where to go, right? And she's going to call 3 places. And the first one that says, yeah, come in and we'll take care of her right now is the one who's going to get the business. So how do we say yes? How do we ensure, we prioritize people who have quick services, right? There's all these like little things from an execution standpoint to be able to do that. But, I don't know. People get so caught up in the big picture that but people make decisions on a local level.
Yeah. What, if you were buying a franchise, like knowing what you know, because you know a lot about all these different franchise companies, I think you said you said 3,000 brands or whatever, but knowing what you know about franchising, what would you look for before picking a brand?
Yeah. I mean, it's that internal thing I talked about earlier. So goals, skills, budget, location, have a very clear understanding of those internally. Now on the externally, I think there's a couple big ones. One is, do you want to work with an emerging or a legacy brand? I think this is like one of the biggest decisions people have to make. There's a lot of appeal both ways. And I think it really depends on your personality and expectations. If there's some people say, hey, I want to work with legacy brands. I want to establish there's 100 franchisees. They've been around for decades. Everything has been proven out. Your challenges are going to be territory, just availability. Things can be sold. What's available may be, other people have failed in that, right? They're resales, and there's a reason that other people haven't bought it, right? Like, so you really want to know, like, why hasn't this thing, like, why is this available, right? In a brand that has a long history of track record, and making sure when you get into it, it's a good timing for that brand, and it's not, I don't know, Burger King now, whatever. It's kind of on this down thing. A bunch of franchisees are going bankrupt. Is now the best time to get into Burger King? Maybe, but maybe not. So I'd really understand that. But like the systems, if you do find an opportunity that works, you're getting a system that's established. It's like an elephant, right? Nothing's really going to change. You're just going to keep moving down that road at the speed it's going to go. Versus you get into an emerging brand, they're going to be more agile. They are going to be adopting AI and like other new technologies way quicker. Maybe they're already doing it because they're much smaller and they can move at a faster speed. On the downside is like, many of them still, it's a startup environment and things are changing. And like the things that got them to whatever point that you're entering, like may break and they have to switch to get to the next level, right? In terms of software, like call centers, the level of people they have. I mean, think about, like, I'm talking about upgrading our people. Like they have to do the same thing. Like the people that they start with as they launch the brand may not be the same people that get them to 100 units or 500 units or whatever. Like, and so emerging brands are going to have more moving parts, and Like for some people, they love that. Like like we work with guys all the time who say, hey, I want to work in a new company. I want to be involved. I want to have build a relationship with the founders. I think that will lead to influence. I think that, being early in will give me better territory, more opportunity, knowing that there's a lot more risk, right? And, with the risk and reward go hand in hand versus you get into a neighborly brand or whatever it is, like not as much risk, but like maybe the rewards could just be harder. So I think that's the big fork in the road to decide what route do you really want to go. Then from there, like I have this due diligence checklist, like we give people, but like, leadership. So who are the people in the brand? Like what's their background? What's their history? Does the franchisor own any units? Like, are they trying to just build this thing up and sell it to private equity and move on? Or are they like, has this been their whole life? Are they extremely vested? Are their kids involved? Like whatever, right? Really trying to understand like what you think their vision of the company is. And, do you want to be part of that? Validation's huge, really talking to other franchisees. I mean, we're huge proponent on that to build out financial models, talk to as many as you can, be ultra conservative in terms of like cutting your sales expense in half and doubling your costs, expectations on costs. Because I think what really gets people down is expectations versus reality. It's like you go into this thing and you've built this perfect Excel spreadsheet that you were going to do X amount, and it's just like perfect hockey stick growth, and you're going to be making all this money by, X amount of time. But then reality hits and it's just like way harder than you thought it was going to be. And like maybe you're in the truck way longer than you thought it was going to be, or whatever it is. But now you're like, you feel discouraged because what you had in your mind does not meet reality versus someone else who says, hey, I think this is going to take me 12 months to make any money, and I'm going to be in hell for the next 6 months. And like you mentally prepare yourself for battle. And then if it's not that bad, then like you feel like you've won, right? Everything in life comes down to expectations versus reality. And for anybody, especially a first time business owner, like if you've never owned a business before, there's a lot of stuff that happens. And I think the more that you go into it, like preparing for a tough time, we are also knowing that if you're willing to do the work that other people aren't, you're going to get those rewards. That it just be so much better, right? Like then I don't know. This is going to be easy. I'll just hire somebody and collect a check on the 15th and whatever it is. Like that's not how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. Another argument for a peer group, right? You have a peer group of people that are already franchisees of that brand. Is something weird that pops up, in 2 seconds, you can find out what seems weird to you is normal for everyone else.
Hey, this has totally happened. Or, hey, this happened to me a couple months ago. This is what I would do. I mean, we've had all kinds of stuff. A guy, this guy, like an employee threatened his life, basically. And he was just like, it's like, what do I do? Like, this guy knows where I work. This guy knows where I live. He knows my kids' names. Like, and like, should I, he stole money from him. So it was like, should I drop the charges? And so like, obviously he was really shaken up as he should be. But then, from the group, there's some other guys who said, yeah, I've been through something similar. We set these rules or, you're never alone with anybody in the warehouse. Like you set these different precautions, background checks, like all these things. But the advice, he was able to talk to us about. I mean, it's like, it's crazy. So.
Yeah, let's shift gears to the franchisor. So pretend you're giving advice to a franchisor. You talked about wanting to work with franchisors at some point.
Yep.
I'm surprised. We get 2 or 3 people a day that somehow come across our portal or interested in working with us. Half of these brands aren't even profitable, but they want a franchise. Of the other half that are profitable, honestly, you spend a little bit of time with them, you quickly realize that those people are going to wind up hating the franchisees and wishing that they were never in franchising. They just sort of get in the business, they sell a franchise, and then they don't invest in the franchisees. But that's me on a rant. But like, what are some thoughts that you have for how franchisors can make it better to attract and keep really good franchisees growing?
Yeah. I mean, there's 2 parts. One is like, should you franchise is this first like half of this. And the second is, how do you make them successful? I think anyone who's thinking about franchising, they have to understand it's a huge responsibility. Like people are investing like life savings in to like to them, especially an emerging brand, right? Them, their ideas, their support. And I don't know. I think too many people think it's like a get rich quick like scheme, like franchisors that they just want to do it versus like, they're in it because they believe in, I don't know, democratizing the ability to build this brand, right? Build it together with other people. And so, yeah, I've like people on LinkedIn reach out. The guy's doing $125,000 in revenue and wants to become a franchisor. It's like, dude, you're not even like making any money. How the heck? Like, and you're going to sell this to somebody else? Like, and you aren't even successful? Like, I thought it was a terrible idea. So your second question, how do they ensure, how do you prioritize franchise profitability? So like one of them is like it should be the brand's number one goal is our franchisees are profitable, and like not like secondarily to their own profitability, which is, counter thinking, right? Because obviously as a company, profit first, like you need to be profitable to make sense. But if your franchisees are profitable, like just like work, even if you take short-term losses to say, hey, we're willing to like make no money, reinvest everything that makes our franchisees profitable, then the franchisees, like if they're profitable, they're going to buy more locations. Like if you had this money machine that just like printed money, wouldn't you buy more of them? Like, wouldn't you continue to grow it? And wouldn't you continue to reinvest back into the business? Because when we look at our business, we've gotten 800% returns on money reinvesting back into our own business, like buying additional units that just very quickly made a lot of money. Like where else am I going to get an 800% return like in 12 months? So I think, profitable franchisees are the accelerant to the growth. I mean, we look at Jersey Mike's just sold valued at $8 billion, and like wildly profitable franchisees. It's been a huge focus of theirs. So I think if it's like a servant leader mentality, is like, we're here to serve them, right? We're here to serve our franchisees. And knowing that if we make them wildly successful and wildly profitable, that like, karma will play a part and the riches will come back to us tenfold, right? And so how can they actually go about and do that? I mean, number one, you make it a priority. Every decision you're making is, does this make our franchisees more profitable? Not, does this make us more money? Does this make us more profitable? You get into supply chain issues, right? Quiznos famously, makes all the franchisees buy from their supply chain, massive rebates on the back end to them. Supply costs go up, franchisees get squeezed on margins, they go out of business. Versus, another one says, hey, let me help you guys get the best possible deal possible. And yeah, maybe they make a little bit of money on the back end, but like franchisees are paying less than they would on their own, right? I think there's things in supply chain that are huge. Royalty rebate structures that reduce with volume. So the more volume a unit could do, maybe the royalty scales down. Midas, we've just implemented something like this in Midas with my help and other people's that like gives you a goal to hit higher volume that then gives us money back, and we have to use that money to reinvest back in the business. So it's not just cash, but it's like, growth. And then I think it's financial education, right? I think I talk to a lot of franchisees and, who are first time business owners, and they will say that they're comfortable with the numbers, looking at a P&L, looking at margins, looking at balance sheet, cash flow, just like really understanding. But when you like really get into it, they're not as comfortable as they should be in terms of like looking at a P&L and saying, hey, am I making money? What are my numbers? If I'm not, my goal is to make 15%, I'm at 10%. Like, do they know how to look at that and figure out, where am I missing my 5%? How do I get to this next level of profitability? When do I invest into buying more stores? When do I invest into hiring that next person? When do I need to cut? When am I overstaffed, right? There's a lot of these decisions that are P&L driven and cash flow driven. I mean, it's the most successful franchisees know their numbers very, very well and can make those decisions quickly. And I think many brands do not have corporate staff who are capable of having those conversations with franchisees, because those corporate staff have also never been a business owner, never had P&L responsibility. They're like, hey, just sell more or whatever, versus, having people on the team who can help them really dive into their business and really understand where the numbers come from. And, that's part of, my goal with the 8-figure thing is to like help educate people. But on a global level, franchisors, I think could develop programs or, acquire programs or whatever it is that teaches franchisees financial education at its most basic level. And that's really cash flow driven, because that's the lifeblood. So.
No, I think that's a really good point. A franchisor, especially an emerging brand, you're no longer in the business of painting the house or flipping the burger or whatever. You're in the business of teaching people how to do that. And there's no money in single unit franchisees. There's no scale, no leverage. if you ever want to go sell your company someday, the buyers, their checklist is how many multi-unit, how much profit from franchisees, what's the development schedule, and the Snows, right? These famous people sold 8 million franchises and none of them are opening. And so all these metrics, and so the franchisor should be highly, highly focused on the success of their franchisees. And as you were saying that, I'm thinking back to recent conversations I've had. There's a lot of franchisors out there trying to sell businesses right now. They can't like franchisees, the way that they're going about such an early stage, trying to jam them with fees, jam them with rebates, kind of under deliver. I actually had a franchisor says, do I have to do that much training? Right. It's like that was his question. And I gave him an FDD of one of our other brands. He goes, do I have to do that much training? I'm like, what's wrong with you? And,
we're shrinking territories just to sell more units. Like there's lots of ways that, they could squeeze. Like, it's like, is the franchisee this cow that you're going to milk until it dies? Or is it a golden goose that will continue to lay eggs?
Yeah.
And, you get to pick.
Yeah. They say you can shear a sheep 100 times, but you can only slaughter it once. Right. So you want to do that. But you can tell anyone listening to this podcast gets that what you're doing. And that's I think why you're so successful as a broker and a consultant. But for a franchisor, for franchisors and potential franchisees, I mean, why is it important that they work with someone like you? I know. I just want to hear you say it.
Yeah, I think there's just so many unknowns. There's 3,000 franchises. I don't know what the percentage is, but I would guess there's a very high percentage that are terrible. There's like the guy who's doing $100,000, right? Or whatever it is. And, I think the advantage we have is like, we work with a lot of brands. We see the good stuff. We see the really bad stuff too. And unfortunately, there's a lot of slick sales guys out there who, sell someone the dream and, people buy into it versus like they work with us. Number one, it doesn't cost you anything. It's totally free. We get paid like a buy side real estate agent. We get paid by the seller, which is the franchisor, if we're successful. But like we provide due diligence checklists that cover a ton of stuff. I host a group call every single week. And so people like who are looking to buy franchises can hop on and like connect with other people who are looking at buying franchises, all at different stages. Somebody who just started, somebody's going to do confirmation day. And I mean, I encourage those guys to talk to each other, to say, hey, what are you learning? What are the questions? What are your fears? Like, why are you looking at this? What other ones did you look at? I want to make it that I arm people with the tools, the resources, the knowledge, and all the stuff. And then, just help them make the best decision for themselves in their life. And, I was also a franchisee of a brand that I lost a bunch of money in, like $300,000. I got into this thing and I lost a bunch of money. Franchisor wanted to sue me for liquidated damages if I closed it. So I sold it for $1 just to get out of the agreement. Like, it was a terrible experience, sleepless nights, all that stuff. And so like, I've been through it as a franchisee. And so like, I want to help people avoid that too, because like if I knew all the things that I know today that I talk about on YouTube and I talk about all the stuff, like I would have not signed that franchise agreement, at least not the way that it was written, with like uncapped liquidated damages, with whatever, a bunch of the negative stuff. And so, listen, my goal is like provide as much value as possible. If someone wants to work with us, my team, I have a team of people, then yeah, great. And if not, and they want to take the risk and work with somebody who, many consultants and many other people out there have never owned a franchise. They have never worked at a franchise. Like, all their knowledge is book knowledge. It's going to be a way just different experience. And hey, for some other people, that's great. But we're pretty successful in, real life, authentic things. And honestly, I just want to see people be successful. Like I said, it's made me a ton of money. It's made a ton of my friends a ton of money. It's given me a life that I'm proud, and I just want to help other people achieve the same thing.
Yeah. And you think about all the knowledge that you guys have. For the people that want to buy the franchise, they get it for free. They basically get everything that you have, helping them steer around landmines into the right thing, cutting the right deal. All this shared experience, this huge ecosystem is free. The franchisor usually pays a portion of the franchise fee to somebody for the sales incentives. But with franchisors, I never understand why franchisors wouldn't bend over backwards to work with someone like you. Because you think about it, you're bringing them a deal that they don't already have, right? It's not like that person's coming through your portal, not their portal. Otherwise, you wouldn't be talking to them. You're bringing them a high quality franchisee that just got all this MBA from you about successful franchising and you're delivering it, and it costs this person, you're going to pay commission anyways, but I never understand franchisors that get hung up on this one-time franchise fee, the upfront franchise fee. All the money for a franchisor is in the back end. And even a franchisor, maybe going back to what we were talking about earlier, franchisors aren't going to make any money the first 4 or 5 years anyways, right? So like until
it's a
you
capital problem. They're just not capitalized, right? And it's these guys who, go to some person and pay $50,000 and they have an FDD and all of a sudden I'm a franchisor now versus, but then they have no money behind them. If they have no money, they can't invest in support. They can't afford investing side of it versus, there's other brands out there that start with $500,000 in the bank, $1 million in the bank. Like those, that's a good question of like a due diligence to these brands is understanding, especially if they're brand new, like what's their capital behind them. And like you said, they don't make any money for years. And so it's much better to be in one that has the money and is willing to make those investments.
Yeah. And Jersey Mike's, like I've known him for 25 years. He just got an $8 billion deal, but that company, the first 4, 5, 6, 7 years of that company's existence, it was lean and mean. And then it would really takes a while when you're at 100 million in sales, then your royalties and stuff start to matter. 200 million, 300 million. Now you're really making some money. Between then, there's not a lot of money. And so I agree with you. Franchisors need to rethink capitalization. A lot of these ones that call us that aren't even profitable, don't have any money on the balance sheet, yet want to sell a franchise, help steer people around from that. So, but I agree. But I wonder, I work with, I'm in this business and I work with brokers like you. So you bring me a good quality, one of our brands we won't mention, but you brought us a really high qualified franchisee that bought a territory. And he was so happy that guy came back later and bought, or that partner came back and bought several more territories, not just more units, but more territories, and built a huge business. I never would have known that guy if it weren't for you. And this guy's resume is a really impressive resume of the franchises that he's already successful with. So no, I appreciate it. I appreciate the work that you guys are doing. So thank you very much. Hey, what about your social media empire? What can people learn? Because I think that you're not everybody's as handy as you are with podcasts and social media and all that other good stuff.
Yeah. So I invest heavily into, for the last 3 years or so into, social media, creating a personal brand, whatever you want to call it. But there's like a power of just, putting yourself out there in the world. It's hard to do. You got to be extremely consistent. I've been doing this every day for 3 years. But it's amazing because it opens up your world to so many opportunities that you didn't know existed. And I think it's great for everyone to get out there and start, figure out where you can add value, figure out, who you can serve. And the best person to serve is the person that, you once were. So for me, it was like, I'm best to serve me 3 years ago or 5 years ago when I was trying to grow my business. I didn't know what direction I wanted to go in. I struggled to figure out, how do I grow? How do I hire people? How do I manage payroll, cash flow? I am the best person to serve that person because I know what it felt like and I knew what it took to get to where I'm at. And so I'm, a big part of anybody just trying to think, hey, how do I build a brand on social media? Just really think about who can you best serve? And it's your former self versus if I'm out there trying to give advice to, I don't know, on crypto or sports or politics or anything else that maybe I have an opinion on it, but I can't really help those people as much as I can help my former self. And so that would be my biggest piece of advice is just get really narrowed in on who you want to serve. And then you got to be consistent every single day. So
Well, you're doing great. And this was awesome. So, you're proof positive of wealth in franchising. So much so that you keep investing in more franchising. So you're walking the talk. Thank you very much, Brian, for sharing your story and your secrets of success. Where can people learn more about you?
Yeah. So I'm going all in on YouTube. So at Brian Beers would be I would appreciate a subscription there. And I have a podcast, Business with Beers, putting out an episode a week. And I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn at Brian Beers are all my kind of main handles. And I share everything we talked about. I've written about, I've shared about, I live it every day. So, but yeah, feel free to connect and shoot me a message. Tell me you heard me on this podcast. I'd love to hear from you.
Great. And we'll post it as well. We'll put the links on. But continued success. I'll keep following along. Thank you very much. And if you like this episode, you know the drill. Please like it and share it. So until next time, thank you guys very much. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Sam.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to Smart Franchising with FranSmart. I'm your host, Dan Rowe. If you enjoyed today's episode, this podcast is only going to get better. Please like, comment, and subscribe to hear more from the most successful franchisors and franchisees, and we'll see you next time.